and you're throwing your hat in the ring from Canada? Come on. You know, they still haven't solved dairy. Two countries on the whole world retaliated against the United States of America tariffs. China, which we all know, and Canada.
We don't have to take a back seat to anyone in the world, and we sure the heck don't have to take a back seat to President Trump.
Canada, I love Canada. I have so many friends in Canada, but they've been very, very poorly led.
He signed an executive order increasing the tariff on Canada from 25 to 35%.
The fact that you're running from Canada is pretty funny. They still haven't figured out cheese, you know. We all know that China and Canada were the two countries in the world that responded against the U.S. tariffs. We don't have to be second to anyone, not even President Trump. Canada is great. I love it. It's where I have a lot of friends. But they have been led very badly. As of Friday, the tax on Canada went from 25% to 35% because of an order he signed. It is clear that tariffs were not used by the Trump government to fix trade. It made them a way to control and force people to do what you want. Putting unfair taxes on Canada did more than hurt the economy. It was a message that any country that dared to think for itself would be punished. But that 35% bomb went off right in front of him. Canada didn't follow the rules. Instead, they used a bigger plan. Trudeau would not bow down as Trump thought. This country is proud and strong enough to never let itself be bullied. But this isn't just a disagreement over tariffs. It's a political fight to the death. Trump thought that Canada would give way. Canada, on the other hand, made the room hate him. This is going to be the worst trade war of 2025. At this point, the United States is at risk. It was hours before Donald Trump made good on his threats, but he was still putting pressure on Canada. Tonight News signed an order that raised the tax on Canada from 25% to 35% starting Friday. It was never about justice that tariffs on Canadian goods will go up to 35% on August 1st, 2025. It meant to tell them to bow down or else. It was said that the reason was that Canada had not stopped fentanyl from coming into the U.S., but this was really just an attempt to scare people. But instead of freaking out, Canada decided to be cold and quiet. In his office, Prime Minister Mark Carney and his team realized that this wasn't an economic war, but rather political blackmail, and they responded with a firm stance. Canada is not for sale. While Trump tried to put pressure on Canada, it quietly took the hit and planned its counterattack. For example, more than 85% of Canadian exports to the U.S. are tariff-free under the USMCA, which means that the so-called 35% bomb didn't go off. Canada not only stood its ground, but also made a long-term strategy based on sovereignty and strong trade relationships, which meant that Trump's plan was doomed from the start. And if he starts to be nice and stops being mean, maybe the president will tone it down a bit. 35% of the time, though, that letter he sent is already in the bag. Trump believed that a 35% tax would be enough to make Canada give up. It turned out to be the exact opposite, though. Not only did Ottawa not give in to pressure, but it also went into this fight with armor because thanks to the USMCA, about 95% of its exports to the US are duty-free. The Bank of Canada says that when all allowances are taken into account, the average tariff that Canadian businesses pay is only 2.3% to 5%. This meant that Trump's 35% bomb didn't go off, just made a lot of noise and confusion. Canada didn't let this edge put them in a corner. Instead, they used it to their advantage with a cold, calculated, and disciplined strategy, making Trump feel the pressure he was trying to put on him. People, we don't have to be subservient to anyone, especially President Trump. He must remember, yes, they are our number one buyer, but we are theirs too. You hear about all the deals he's making in Japan and Korea, which are good places to do business. And Japan will show you what I mean. He said that he had made a great lot and that God bless him. They often buy things worth $79 billion US. For the border, Canada buys $359 billion USD worth of goods. 9 million people in the US get up every morning to make a useful thing or item just for Ontario. Right now, those 9 million jobs are in danger. A study from Forbes says that trade with Canada directly supports about 9 million American jobs. It's not just an impressive number, it shows how much millions of U.S. workers depend on business ties across borders. A report from Business Data Lab also shows that more than 1 million jobs in the United States are in cities that depend a lot on exports to Canada. There are strong economic ties between the United States and Canada. There are assembly lines in Michigan, steel plants in Pennsylvania, and military hubs in Kansas. TD Economics also says that the United States' biggest export market right now is Canada. In the first 3 quarters of 2024, American goods and services were worth nearly $350 billion there, more than in China, Japan, the UK, and France combined. is the power for a government to decide for itself what to do in foreign affairs. That's what this government has done too. This right has to be used all the time. National rights are a bit like muscle. They lose strength if you don't use them or train them. It's not an invasion that Donald Trump wants, but he does want to take over the United States. That is what he said. It seems likely that he hopes that eventually we'll get tired of dealing with this crazy stuff across the border and give up. Is a method for carrying it out. He's tired, but still playing a game of pressure. He thinks that Canada will get tired of him, the chaos, and the fact that things aren't always the same. Because you give up when you're tired. That is how dictatorships get the upper hand. However, Carney is not tired, he is focused, and Canada is not going to bow down. It gets stronger every day instead. Reuters says that the Canadian government has announced a support package worth $1.2 billion Canadian dollars, which is about $870 million US dollars, to protect its softwood lumber industry from high U.S. anti-dumping and countervailing duties, which could reach a level of 34.5% compared to 14.5% before. Not only is Canada saying it is determined, it is also doing things to show it. Things that are important to the country, like steel, aluminum, rail, and canned goods, are being brought back on land, not because they are mean, but because they have to. That's known as development under stress. And Washington is putting pressure on them, not the other way around. This time, Canada is stronger than ever. Trump thought he could wear them down, and there are no signs that it will give up. The Prime Minister said during the campaign that this person wants to break us. Trump wants to choke Canada in any way possible, from putting tariffs on its goods to using claims about Palestine as a way to put political pressure on the country. The fact that Trump didn't get mad when Mexico or the EU accepted Palestine as a state is proof. He was very angry when Canada said it would do the same thing. Reuters reports that Trump warned that Canada's recognition of Palestine would make it hard to reach a trade agreement. He also said that he would put a 35% tariff on goods if no deal was made by the due date. According to The Guardian, Trump also signed an order that raised tariffs on Canadian goods from 25% to 35%, just as things were getting heated over Ottawa's choice to recognize Palestine. AP News reported that Trump used this diplomatic move as bargaining chip in trade talks, even saying that Canada was helping Hamas. Trump knows that his idea of power is shattered if Canada can deal with other countries without his help. But Carney chose what to do like a real leader, not a following. And Canada's message was stronger than any number about tariffs. It's not Washington's land. It never has been and never will be. We buy more from the U.S. than from Korea, Japan, China, the UK, and France put together. So I wasn't going to give up. And I told the Prime Minister, don't give up. Hit that guy back as hard as you can. That's what we need to. Even Doug Ford, who isn't known for being a very nationalistic leader, wants Mark Carney to fight back against Trump's tariffs. This says a lot. Global News reports that Ford said Canada can't do nothing and needs to take action to protect its own workers and businesses, especially steel and aluminum, that will be directly affected by the new tariffs. This is how badly Trump has handled it. He has turned even moderate politicians into warriors. You won't get quiet when you insult a country's honor, make fun of its choices, and threaten its economy. You get steel. Trump was hoping for a kiss, but he got hit back. That's exactly what Ford wanted. Not to make things worse, but to protect, not a small thing. We are proud of this. Even though Canada doesn't want a trade war, it won't give up its principles just to escape one. Now, the man who used to be in charge of all negotiations can't get in because Canada is now one country, one voice, one goal, and one answer. Don't roll over anymore. But Canada, I think not so much or not so good. Think about what the president would say about that. They said, we are going to recognize the Palestinian state. Really, don't be so tone deaf. Yes, the president really wants to see peace in Gaza, and you're putting your name in the hat from Canada. Please, they still haven't figured out cheese, There are still two countries in the world that have fought back against the United States. By deciding to recognize Palestine, Canada has shown that it is completely determined, making it a clear statement of authority to the whole world. This wasn't a careless move or an attempt to anger Washington. It was a well-thought-out action based on the ideals and principles that Canada upholds. Carney didn't say sorry, change his mind, or feel the need to explain. And their proud silence said a lot. Canada is an independent country that will not give up its values for a trade deal, no matter how bad the deal is. This isn't just a political move. It shows how strong and independent Canada is on the world stage. Carney has been very clear that he wants the best deal for Canadians, However, that might not happen by August 1st. The talks will go on until we reach a deal. Then he told Trump about a plan to recognize Palestine as a state, which caught his attention. He wrote online just after midnight, "This will make it very hard for us to make a trade deal with them, oh Canada." But later, calm down. The talks are coming to a head. This is a tough discussion. While Washington builds walls of high tariffs to protect itself, Ottawa quietly opens trade routes to Europe and Asia. This slowly drains the economic energy that factories and ports used to provide. Let's begin with a picture that can't be skipped. With a value of $71.5 billion, the U.S. trade imbalance for goods and services grew by 18.7% in May 2025. To sum up, we are exporting less and receiving almost the same amount, and the difference is growing faster than we thought it would. Exports dropped by 4% to $279 billion, according to figures from the Department of Commerce. Imports, on the other hand, stayed almost the same at $350 billion or $500 million. This is a clear sign that the quick nationalist tariffs haven't changed the trade balance, but they are hurting our own exports. On a larger scale, this huge imbalance means that the production export sector is losing steam and the costs of doing business are still high. The U.S. is having a hard time, but our biggest trade partner, Canada, has become even less dependent on the U.S. In May, Canada's trade with countries other than the U.S. hit a new high of 47.6 billion Canadian dollars. At the same time, the share of exports to the U.S. dropped to 8.3%, which is one of the lowest numbers ever seen. Tariffs are more than just words in a report. They change the price tags right away. One great example is aluminum, which is used in Early in July 2025, the Midwest aluminum premium hit a new high of 68.25 cents per pound, which is a rise of almost 80% since the end of May. In other words, each beer can hold a metal car part. All of them come with extra costs from the start. In the U.S. in February 2025, the average price of a new car on the market was $48,039. This is a big number that will be hard to lower as long as the cost of metal stays high. As material prices and supply chain uncertainties rise for electric vehicles, EVs, household purchasing power drops. This is especially true for middle-income people who are getting close to retirement. According to a more in-depth look at different industries, the new U.S. tariffs have also cut global company profits by around $15 billion. The industries that have been hit the hardest are manufacturing, automotive, and industrials. The cost rise doesn't go away as the supply chain reprices risks. A lot of it goes to American customers or cuts into the profits of American businesses. When you look at how the US, Canada, and Mexico are all connected, the auto business is the best example. Before a car is fully put together, parts like engines, gears, and control boards can cross the US-Mexico border 6 to 8 times. Every time a tariff is put in place, it's like adding sand to a machine that's already going. A study from the U.S. Congressional Budget Office, CBO, says that more than 30% of the value of a car made in North America comes from parts that go through more than one border. Once the 25% tariff on finished vehicles and parts goes into effect, factories on both sides of the border will have to reroute shipments, find new suppliers, or cut back on production. Just crossing a $2,500 transmission module or an $800 electronic circuit board adds to the cost, which means that the U.S. retail price of a car goes up by $1,500 to $3,000 per car. If just-in-time assembly stops for even one day, the company can lose $20 million to $50 million in income, not counting the cost of starting up again. From Mexico's point of view, leaders in the car industry have said that the current tariff situation can't last. The rules of origin for USMCA say that goods with 75% regional content should not be subject to duties. However, many car models still don't meet this level, so finished vehicles are subject to tariffs. Because of this, fewer new investments were made in the U.S. car industry. During the same time frame, the average cost of production in the U.S. went up by 6 to 8%. This was due to tariffs and problems in the supply chain. This is a standard case of a cross-border production network hitting a link that looks like it is outside the network, but the impact is felt all the way through. While this is going on, rivals like Germany, Japan, and South Korea are able to keep their supply chains running smoothly thanks to large free trade agreements. These agreements help them avoid tariff shocks and keep car prices more stable. This difference will soon show up in U.S. output, jobs, and car prices, which could hurt our long-term market share and competitive edge. The U.S. has been dealt a silent but serious hit by Canada's change in trade policy. The most recent data from Statistics Canada shows that Canada's exports to the U.S. have been going down for 4 months in a row. In May 2025, exports to the US made up only 68.3% of all exports, which is about $47.6 billion Canadian dollars, which is almost $4 billion less than the same time last year. On the other hand, exports to other parts of the world have grown quickly, setting a new record with a 5.7% rise that added up to $22.1 billion Canadian dollars in May alone. This trend makes a clear point. As it gets harder to plan business trips, in the US, Canadian companies are quickly looking for customers in other countries. Most importantly, they have found them because their exports to Japan have gone up 23%, to Germany they have gone